Okay, let's see how you did with this Coke Pepsi business here. Hopefully you did these 5 ratios. I did a few more. I did the EPS and the PE as well. But let's take a look first at debt ratio here. If you look at the debt for Pepsi, and I'm using the most recent year here, if you add up all the liabilities, notice they have current liabilities here, but these are also liabilities down here, long-term debt, other liabilities, deferred income taxes. You can tell when the liabilities end because right after the last liability, you'll see a new section called shareholders equity or owner's equity. Clearly, these are not liabilities. These are equity accounts. So up here, you should be able to add all these numbers up. Or actually, these first two are added up to the 5270. You add in the 8841, 1852, 1973, and I get, this is in millions, so I get actually $17.9 billion divided by the total assets, 24.7. And that gave me debt ratio of 0.72 for Pepsi. Okay, doing the same thing for Coke, you would take the 6177, add up these three numbers. I believe I got a 8.6 divided by 13.8 or 13.9, and I came up with the 0.62. So Coke actually has 62 cents of debt for every dollar of assets. Pepsi has 72 cents of debt for every dollar of assets. That's what that means. Okay, current ratio over here, I looked at Pepsi, and this is very nice. They don't usually have this, but they have the total current assets already added up for you. So all you got to do is take 5072 divided by total current liabilities, 5270. Okay, and so 5072, 5270, I came up with 0.96 for a current ratio. In other words, they only have 96 cents of current liquid or close to liquid assets to help them uh, pay for any current liabilities that were due within a year. Um, Coca-Cola was even worse, actually. If you take their total current assets, 5205, divide that by their total current liabilities, 6177, I came up with 0.83. So neither of these companies had a current ratio above 1.0. In other words, they had only 84% for Coke. They had only 84 cents for every dollar of debt, 84 cents of liquid assets or current assets to cover the current liabilities that were coming due within the next year. Pepsi was a little bit better. Okay, so 96 cents. All right, quick ratio. Well, that's the same numbers if you just take out the prepaids and the inventories. Remember, the balance sheet accounts are listed in order of decreasing liquidity. So remember, we said you take out inventories and anything that's less liquid than inventories, in other words, anything below it. So for Pepsi, I would just add up these first three numbers here, and I think I got 3.5 with a little bit of rounding. I got 3.5 divided by the same current liabilities, 5.27, and I got a 0.66. For Coke, if I add up these first three numbers, don't take inventories, don't take the prepaids or other assets. If I add up these three numbers, I got 3.06 divided by the same current liability, 6.2, and I got 0.49. So when you look at the key here, 0.49 for Coke, 0.67 for Pepsi. These numbers have to drop because you took out a part of the bigger number here. Okay, so what does this mean? You'd like to see the quick ratio a little bit higher. You'd like to see the current ratio above 1.0. Neither company has it, but these are healthy companies. They simply have a lot of accounts receivable they're going to collect. Okay, so let's look at that next. Okay, so for accounts receivable, all right, remember what you had to do is to get your accounts receivable, you had to take the average of these two numbers for Pepsi. The end balance from 93 is the beginning balance for 94. Average those up, divide them into what again? Oh, I had to divide them into, I believe, their credit sales. Yeah, I had to divide them into the credit sales. Well, that number wasn't given to you except at the bottom of this sheet here where I had to write it in. So you divide that into 22,368. I actually went and looked it up. Okay, and so I came up with a accounts receivable of 11.34 for Pepsi here, 11.34. That means they are cycling through their accounts almost 12 times a year, 11 times a year for them. Pepsi, not quite as much. Okay, when I look at Pepsi's, I average the inventory value. Oops, I average the inventory value up here, 1.047 billion and 1.049 billion. divide that into their credit sales, which was down here at the bottom, handwritten, 12.212. And I came up with, for Coke, I came up with, I think, 8.82. All right, so I hope you see where those numbers are coming from. What this means is Coke is cycling through their accounts receivable not quite as quickly as Pepsi is. Pepsi's turning them over very fast. All right, that means that could mean that Pepsi is actually just more aggressive about getting their people that owe them money to pay. Maybe Coke is not so quick. Remember that Coke is a little bit more of an international company back in '94. Okay, Pepsi was very much involved with the fast food industry then, Taco Bell and KFC, and I think one other one, what was it, Pizza Hut. And they sold these off in the late 90s. So at this point in time, when these numbers were current, Pepsi was still very involved in fast food. Coke had a much bigger supply chain stretching all across the globe. Pepsi had not quite made such an inroads into foreign markets. So Pepsi has a longer supply chain. Maybe they have to let people pay in a little bit more slow fashion. Therefore, they don't roll through their accounts receivable as much. Okay, these are all things to think about here. The last one I asked you guys to actually calculate was inventory turnover. So let's take a look at that real quick. Remember, inventory turnover was you have to look at the inventory value, average these two numbers. The end of 93 is the beginning of 94, so average these two numbers. And I believe I got the average there of 947. I divided that into their cost of goods sold. Is that on the balance sheet? Nope, it's on the income statement though. So you have to come over here and get cost of goods sold divided into 13.75 or 13.715. And I came up with 14.5 for Pepsi. 14.5 right there. For Coke, same thing here. Inventory, average these two numbers, 1049, 1047, that's 1048 is the average divided into their cost of goods sold. 6167, and I came up with 5.88. Now, what does this mean? Somebody's turning it over more quickly. Remember, we talked a moment ago about Coke having a bigger global empire, longer supply chains, okay, having to ship product all across the oceans, and it's all sealed, right? It's all pressurized and sealed. It's carbonated beverages mainly. So that stuff, actually, despite their freshness date argument, it has a long shelf life. That can be a long, long supply chain from factory to actually storefront. And so they're probably not cycling through their inventories quickly. Their inventory is going to sit and last longer. Kind of like Twinkies. I know Hostess just recently went out of business or is claiming they're going to go out of business. So Twinkies are on everyone's mind lately. Pepsi, however, has those fast food restaurants. They've got to cycle through their inventory quickly, even if it's frozen, even if it's not the best food in the world at Taco Bell. But here we go. They're going through their inventory more than once a month. 14.5 times per year means more than once a month. They've got to cycle through their products more. And this is probably driven up by the fast food businesses that Pepsi owns. So there's a couple things to think about. Those were the 5 ratios you had to do. You will have to do many of these on your final exam, so be ready for that. Understand, if given a balance sheet and an income statement like this with more than 1 year's data, you should be able to calculate accounts receivable turnover, and you should be able to calculate inventory turnover, as well as debt ratio and current ratio. Okay, I don't think quick ratio is on the test, but you should be able to do all those things on the final exam. Okay, I will get back to our lecture here and we'll move on to some other performance ratios here in a moment.